You're listening to the Fan Club podcast, where two polar opposites experience each other's fandoms for the very first time.
Hey guys, my name is Sarah.
This is Matthew.
Welcome to the second episode of the Fan Club podcast. We are discussing The Incredible Hulk, released in 2008. This is directed by Louis Leterrier. I apologize if I'm butchering that, but that's what it reads phonetically to me. So yeah, we watched the Incredible Hulk. This is the one with Edward Norton, not Mark Ruffalo. We haven't gotten there yet.
The director, he actually wanted Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner instead of Edward Norton, but Marvel felt like Edward Norton would have been a better Hulk than Ruffalo.
Like, what was your introduction to the Hulk as a whole?
Honestly, my introduction to Hulk was some of the earlier comics with Hulk when Hulk first became Hulk, and it peaked a lot more when World War Hulk came out. That comic arc that brought in the X-Men, brought in every hero and villain.
And we've had a conversation about, he loves World War Hulk, this comic arc. That arc doesn't necessarily pertain to this particular movie, correct?
Yeah, correct.
So
it
you
pertains
said we're
more to later in S.H.I.E.L.D. or later in the MCU.
Probably going to touch on it a little bit later from the comic perspective, just because you were saying it would spoil me, correct?
Correct. It
Okay.
will spoil some stuff in Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, and Thor Ragnarok slightly.
Keep your eyes peeled for those episodes in the future, and if you are big into the Hulk comics. But like you were talking to me last night about how you hadn't seen this particular iteration of the Hulk movies until fairly recently, right?
I saw it when it first came out, but other than that, I haven't really re-watched it just because this movie never really piqued my interest in it. But this was also before the MCU was a thing.
Yes. So this movie was made by Universal, not Paramount or Disney. This is like way before, as we touched on in the Iron Man episode. This was before the MCU really was a thing. When was that, by the way? Like, when does the MCU actually? I know it technically starts with Iron Man, but like, when did it
MCU became a thing after the Avengers,
Okay.
around the time as the Avengers came out in 2012.
So
when the MCU started getting coined.
So most people, when they think of the Hulk, they think of Mark Ruffalo. They associate him in the role because he's the one that's in Avengers, and the rest is
besides some of the older people,
this is the one
grew up with Lou Ferrigno's.
This is the one with Edward Norton.
Mm-hmm.
And he is in he's in Fight Club and Primal Instinct and American History X is the other really big one. I'm not super familiar with Edward Norton. I'm sure he's a great actor. I didn't love him in this role, if I'm being completely honest. I thought I've seen enough clips and like stuff about Mark Ruffalo as Hulk, and not to compare the two because I think they are very different, but I think Mark Ruffalo brings something different to Hulk that Edward Norton doesn't have.
Yeah,
this is without having seen Mark Ruffalo. This is just from with content I have consumed.
Yeah, I just don't want to spoil too much.
Fair enough.
About Mark Ruffalo's Hulk, because it may spoil some stuff with the Avengers.
I will say, going into this movie, I thought it was a bit confusing in the intro sequence, because I felt like we were almost like dropped into the middle of the story. I felt as though I felt like I was missing something, so you were saying to me before we started watching it, or like during the intro or whatever, because I was really confused. You were saying something about how this is almost kind of a sequel, were you saying?
Yeah, so there was another Hulk movie in the early 2000s where Hulk was in I believe it was New Mexico. I could be wrong.
But it's not with Edward Norton.
No, it's with someone else.
The intro sequence didn't really do a whole lot to like intro me to, like, I felt like with Iron Man, it did a really good job of introing me to the character of Tony Stark, whereas I didn't really know what I was getting into. It also really, the intro also really felt like a title sequence to like an episode of CSI or something.
Yeah, so Hulk was supposed to just, because Hulk has been owned by Universal since, I think, 1997, because Universal made the cartoon Hulk back then. So it was just supposed to be a one-off by itself, not part of anything else.
The one in the 2000s or this one?
This one.
Okay.
Was supposed to just be by itself. That's why, like, Nick Fury's not in it. That's why, like, literally no one else from this movie is in any of the others until...
Going into this movie completely blind, not understanding really anything about any of these characters, I felt lost, personally.
Yeah.
What exactly happens in this intro sequence so you can fill in the gaps a little bit?
So, in this version of Hulk, you see him getting the super serum. I'm not going to say what the super serum is, because it will spoil.
I've already clocked that the super serum is the same as Captain America.
Okay, so it is Captain America's super serum. They're trying to recreate it.
Because if you missed our first episode on Iron Man, I went over a little bit of this, but I've seen the first Captain America movie and the first Avengers movie. So, but it's been like, that was in like 2011. So it was a very long time ago. So I generally that a super serum is a thing.
The government was trying to create another Captain America, but they put in too much gamma radiation into it.
In the timeline, Captain America happens in the 40s, and this is at
2008.
Yeah, this is at 2008 was present day.
Yeah, so they only made a handful of the super serums, and so all the governments around the world have been trying to recreate them. There's been a few semi-successes, like throughout time. There's been a few successes with the super serum, like Punisher.
That name rings a bell. I couldn't tell you anything about it, but that name does.
He's part of the Defenders.
Basically, there's a time jump, and he's hiding in Brazil for the military.
Yeah, it's like 8 years later, 5 years later.
I did really, really like a lot of I can't remember exactly what the town name that they're in. They're in some like very small little village in Brazil. And I did really like a lot of the establishing shots of Brazil. I thought those were really cool. And I don't know. I really like films with like a really set time and place. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really nice. There's a scene where, so he's working in like some kind of soda factory, and he cuts his finger, and the blood drops onto like the conveyor belt with the sodas, and it drops into the soda. And my immediate thought was, because he freaks out, and it immediately made me think of lycanthropy, which is like being a werewolf essentially. And it really makes me think of like Lupin from Harry Potter, if any of you guys are familiar with that, and the treatment of like blood diseases, and even like in the real world, even AIDS. I thought that was a really interesting. I don't know if that's what they were going for, but that's the interpretation I had of it.
It took about a year to make that shot.
Oh, the blood droplet?
Uh-huh.
Interesting.
It took the visual effects artist over a year to construct the shot where Dr. Banner's gamma radiated blood falls through 3 factory stories onto a bottle.
That was a really cool shot, because it like the way that the camera was the blood droplet. Mm-hmm. And then this whole process gives us our Stan Lee cameo, which I didn't cover in the last one, but I do enjoy the little cameos. My immediate thought was that cannot be sanitary for them to sell contaminated soda, even if your blood isn't rife with gamma radiation. So then there's a scene where he gets this flower from this mysterious Mr. Blue character. And so this is like what he uses to make an antidote, correct?
Yeah, he tries the antidote.
And he like crafts this antidote himself in this like a little apartment in this dinky little town in Brazil. I was really confused because they didn't establish. You called him Dr. Banner.
In the Marvel universe, he is the 4th smartest. Ranges from 180 to 220.
Okay, that doesn't answer the question though. Is he a chemist of some kind?
Dr. Banner is the smartest in biology, chemistry, medicine, and nuclear physics.
And we figure out in this scene that the cure is only temporary. So he can still turn into Hulk, but
I mean, in the comics there was never a cure.
Yeah, weren't you saying there's a lot of interpretations on this?
Yeah, there's so many different story arcs where Hulk got his powers. Like, there was one where it was a nuclear bomb. There was another one where he was experimented on. There was another one where he was just born with it.
The other thing that there is discrepancies on is whether or not he turns at a certain heart rate or only when he's angry. Because
on the arc.
In this, it seems like it's his heart rate.
It's stress. If Bruce Banner is about to die, Hulk will come out and protect. Best way to think of Hulk and Banner is think of it like Hulk is a parasite inside of Bruce Banner, protecting him from any harm.
See, I really interpret, and maybe I'm completely off base here, but I totally interpreted this as like a lycanthropy, like a werewolf kind of situation. Like, he's very similar to Lupin in that way, like that he doesn't want to become this.
No, he does not want. He wants to be able to control the Hulk.
So if anybody knows Harry Potter, feel free to like chime in on this point with me. But it really makes me think of like the antidote as like the Wolfsbane potion, which basically like he takes the Wolfsbane potion and he turns into a werewolf at every full moon, but he's not dangerous. And that's it's similar to this cure in a way.
Bruce can the biggest difference between the two, Bruce can kind of control when he turns.
Do you get where I'm coming from though?
Yes.
Immediately I got bad vibes off of this Blonsky guy in similar ways that I got bad vibes from Obadiah in Iron Man. I don't know if it's just they make it wildly obvious in these movies who the villain is. However, Matthew seems to think that the General is a worse villain than Blonsky.
Yes, the General's absolutely the worst villain. I would put the General up there with Thanos, to be completely honest. Like, General Theodos Ross is such of he covers up his mistakes. He made Hulk out to be a villain because of his mistake.
He seems very like bureaucratic and like narcissistic, and like he can do no wrong if it's like for the greater good kind of thing.
There is no greater good when it comes to him. It's him or nothing.
One of my big questions, I'm not entirely sure if it got answered later, and maybe we'll get there. Invincible when he's Hulk?
Yes. Nothing can penetrate his skin.
I noticed later that there were like cuts and scrapes on him, like when he was Hulk, like when he was in the cave.
That's more like his skin stretching.
Ugh. Okay, can we touch on this for a second? How gross the skin stretching and the bone cracking in this movie is?
Think about it. That's his body does that every time he turns. All of his bones.
I know. I'm just purely talking about from a movie perspective, like from a sound of like. Ugh, it literally made my stomach churn every single time. Mainly with the lizard guy, Abomination.
But now you know how I feel when you crack your neck. So you know how that creeps you out?
I have a really bad habit of cracking all of my bones.
So you know how you got creeped out by Hulk and Abomination cracking their bones? Now you know how I feel when you crack your neck multiple times.
They really didn't need to go as far as they did with the sound effects in this movie.
But without the sound effect, it would have just looked weird. Just him growing and stretching.
I know, but it's like it was really gross.
Yeah.
He basically, after this whole battle with the military, they come to Brazil to find him, and he escapes and blah blah blah. So we have a time jump, or not a time jump, but like I guess a mini time jump. It is technically. He ends up in some kind of jungle, and there's a time card across the screen that says he's in Guatemala. And I looked it up. Guatemala is 3,500 miles away from Brazil. How the hell did he get that far in that amount of time? And Matthew was saying that he's like 9 feet tall and can, sure, but like how do you get 3,500 miles in a day?
So, Hulk, when he is running, he can run at like 400 miles per hour, according to the comics.
I'm sorry, that just doesn't seem plausible to me as I'm watching a movie about a giant green man.
But he is pure muscle. When he's in Hulk mode, he is pure muscle, 0% fat.
Yeah, but like, wouldn't he have been captured? Wouldn't he have to pass people?
No, I mean,
I just would have liked to see the point in between.
If he runs and jumps fast enough, he can actually travel 3 miles in a single jump.
Is that like an actual fact?
Yeah. Do you want to guess how strong his punch is?
How?
56,000 Gs.
I have no way to compare that.
He can exert a force of 11 million pounds while ripping a car in half. He literally ripped a police car in half and used it as punching gloves.
I know that there's a couple of scenes in between now and when he finally gets to the college with Liv Tyler, which Liv Tyler has like marginally more personality in this movie than Gwyneth Paltrow. Marginally.
Not a lot, but it's more.
And Liv Tyler, if you did not know, is Steven Tyler of Aerosmith fame's daughter. I don't dislike her, I just didn't think she did anything. So I did not make the initial connection that the general is her dad. I don't know why. I know that they like said her full name multiple times and like all that stuff, but like for some reason I just like did not make the connection until she called him dad.
Even though she was in the initial credit or the initial scene.
I just thought it was a coincidence. I love the shot of, so when they're having that whole like battle sequence at the college, and he's like on the glass and enclosed bridge, and there's a shot of him like transforming in the bridge with like the smoke and stuff. That was a really cool shot. Every time he transforms, he like rips his clothes. Does he need like a new wardrobe every time?
Yep.
And like you see his shoes like break apart.
Yep, he has to buy new shoes, new wardrobe every time.
Because that seems expensive. This whole battle is like literally on a college campus. If TikTok existed in 2008 and, you know, this was real, this would be on TikTok immediately. I mean, we see people like filming outbursts on planes end up on TikTok within 30 seconds. Kind of like the inclusion of that, of the reporter saying that like this guy recorded it on his cell phone, because it's like very of that age. Even in 2008.
Their names were Jack McGee and Jim Wilson. Jack McGee was a tabloid reporter who attempted to track down the Hulk in the 1997 television series. And the other name, Jim Wilson, in the comics, is the nephew of Sam Wilson, who is the Falcon.
Interesting. And correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first time referred to as the Hulk.
The first time he was referred to as the Hulk was...
Is that a name he gave himself?
No.
He claps and like creates a sound wave and like blasts everybody. And I was like, is this a thing? Yeah. And then Matthew immediately was like, they did it in Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
No, okay. No, so not the clap thing, the sonic blasts.
Oh yeah, no, the giant had like it on their tank or whatever.
Yeah. The sound blasters 3000.
I was like, is this thing a real thing that the military has? And Matthew was like, they used it in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And if you're a fan of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you'll know what episode I'm talking about. But it's like when they're doing the police training day or whatever, and like Rosa uses it on Boyle.
Yeah.
We love that show. So I kept accidentally calling Ty Burrell Will Arnett accidentally.
Even though they look nothing alike.
I think they look identical.
Mm,
Ty Burrell's the guy from Modern Family.
yes.
Will Arnett voices Batman in the Lego movies.
Yes.
I think they look similar-ish.
Yeah, they look as similar as the 3 people that I think look similar.
Oh yeah, Matthew thinks that Sandra Bullock, Anne Hathaway, and Julia Roberts all look identical.
They look more identical than Will Arnett and
Okay, y'all listeners, whose side are you on here? I'm curious to know. I'm obsessed with the cinematography in the scene where he's in the shower at the motel, and he's having some PTSD from this battle that he just had, and the shot is of the shower head, and the shower head turns into like gunfire. That cinematography is incredible. Like, I loved that. And in the same scene, or the scene right after, she what's her face, Betty, gives him the purple pants.
Yeah, so the reason why the purple pants is significant is because in the comics he's always wearing purple pants.
He's also always depicted as gray, right?
No, so he was gray in the first couple appearances, just because at that time they were having issues with green on their printer.
Yeah, but I really liked the inclusion of that.
So he was gray.
I really liked that inclusion of the purple pants, because I feel like even if you don't know Hulk, you know like the green skin and the purple pants. I just thought that was like really clever.
So in a deleted scene, Blosky describes Hulk to the general as 10 feet, 1,500 pounds easily, and green or gray, sir, grayish green. It was very dark. I couldn't tell. He was originally gray, but that's just because of a printer issue.
They go to New York, and the crazy accuracy of this New York scene where they figure that they're safer taking a cab than they are on the subway, just in case he transforms.
Yeah, why put someone who has stress issues that can turn into a 1,500 pound hulking beast in a tiny metal container filled with people?
I was blown away by, so I used to live in New Jersey, not that far from New York, and New York drivers are on a different level. If you've never been to Manhattan, most TV shows, movies that are taking place in Manhattan and that you see depicted in media are pretty darn accurate.
Yeah.
I found this really funny. The guy is like weaving all through traffic, and like he's driving all crazy, and like it's so funny because Betty, this character, is so level-headed but she like flies off the handle of this cab driver, which is like so accurate to New Yorkers. Another little like overarching touch I think that this movie had a really nice job. His character of Mr. Blue, what is his real name? Stein or something like that?
Yeah, Dr. Stein.
So, editing Sarah here. When we refer to Mr. Blue as Stein, his real name is Stearns. So just disregard every time I call him Mr. Stein.
So he is depicted as wearing all blue throughout all the scenes, because that's their code names between him and Bruce, is Mr. Blue and Mr. Green, to like so they can communicate and find this antidote and stuff. Yeah. And Mr. Blue, in all of his scenes towards the end of the movie, he's only ever wearing blue. Bruce Banner throughout the movie, he has like a lot of the cinematography, like he is depicted as like green light shining on his face. His bed sheets are green. Mm-hmm. He's in this scene that he meets Mr. Blue, he's wearing a green shirt. I really liked that like clever, like overarching color tones. I also really liked this scene when Mr. Blue brings Bruce and Betty into that room where he is like trying to use the gamma radiated blood to like cure diseases and stuff. And I would have loved to have seen this angle explored more, to see like the ways in which this technology could have been used for good.
Did try that in the comics, but how it turned out was multiple Hulks.
Oh, okay.
So, like, one of the Hulks, they're not all Hulk. They're different colors, different names, different personalities. One of them is Thunderbolt, who is Ross. Gets injected with some of the Hulk blood and turns red, and is the Hulk, or looks like the Hulk. Can control himself. He can't turn back into human, but he is stuck as the quote unquote red version of Hulk.
Yeah, so then I talked about the Abomination and how unsettling the bone cracking was. And I totally called that Blonsky was gonna. I didn't really touch on this throughout the movie, just I don't really have notes on it, but the whole movie he's basically Blonsky is kind of getting a big head, and he basically gets somebody to inject him with the serum, and he then goes to Stein, Mr. Blue. Doesn't he get injected? Yeah, no, they do the whole process of that they did on Hulk.
They more injected him more along the lines of how Captain America was injected.
Yeah. So, and that turns him into the Abomination because it's like 2 strains of the serum.
No. So he turns into the Abomination because the Hulk gamma blood reacted with the Abomination, with the super serum in him.
And I thought that angle was interesting, or that story was interesting. But like, I just personally didn't find Blonsky to be like a really compelling character. Like, I didn't find him to be like an interesting villain, in my personal opinion. I liked the concept. Maybe it was the actor. I'm not entirely sure. They really didn't need to do the most with the bone cracking, like namely the joint bones and the spine. I really didn't need that.
That looks very similar to how Abomination looks in the comics.
And like the shot where Hulk like takes one of his broken bones and like stabs him with it.
Yeah, no, he rips the bone out of him.
Yeah, but it's like that fight in and of itself, I thought that there was great stakes. I thought the anticipation, like you're waiting for the helicopter to blow up with all the people in it. You were talking about how like Abomination goes to grab that metal chain to like choke Hulk out with it, and you were like, Matthew literally out loud goes, "The villains always fight so cheap."
Yeah. So the Abomination is actually one of the stronger versions of Hulk. The strongest is Red Hulk, which is Thunderbolt, just because he has the most control over his body.
Is that in the films or is that just comics?
Comics.
Okay.
The only Hulk that you see is Hulk and Abomination are the only ones. You don't see any of the others in the movies yet. They could come eventually.
So that is pretty much the entire movie. Overall, like I said, I really liked some of the fight scenes, which is weird for me to say because I'm really not an action person at all.
Yeah.
And like, but I did think that I think the overarching concept of the movie was interesting, but I thought that it had some story issues as far as like I felt confused at some points. I felt like I didn't have a general understanding of the character like I did with Iron Man. Like I felt like I had a better understanding of who Tony Stark was at the end of the movie. I feel like I know exactly the same amount about Bruce Banner than I did before.
You'll learn more about Bruce Banner in the upcoming movies.
Sure. I'm just saying, as a standalone movie, I don't think it did a great job of character development, is what I'm trying to say.
It was supposed to just be a one-off. That's why none of the other characters besides General Ross has shown up in any others. But I'm not saying which movies. You'll find out.
Yeah. I do hope we get better.
And then Blotsky also comes back in a later movie.
I do hope we get better female leads.
I mean, there's Black Widow.
Yeah, I hope we, and namely like female sidekicks or love interests. I hope we get better ones because I'm just getting real sick of these like boring milk toast doesn't do anything.
The only one that's coming to mind would be Agent Carter. Technically, Wanda was a sidekick for a bit, technically. And when she was first introduced in the MCU, technically she was a sidekick.
She's the lead of her show, though.
Yes. I'm saying when she was first introduced.
Okay, you want to hit us with some fun facts?
Edward Norton was recommended by Lou Ferrigno because he was most like Bill Baxby, who played Bruce Banner in 1977. It's incredible.
And this is the guy that makes a cameo in the scene where he's delivering pizzas.
Yes.
Yes. Which Matthew showed me pictures of this guy, and when I say it looks like bad Photoshop, but it's not bad Photoshop, it looks exactly like a superhero movie from the 70s would look. Hey, Google the Hulk TV show from the 70s and take a good laugh. It's funny.
One of the biggest differences between the 03 movie and the 08 movie of Hulk was in the 03 movie, when Hulk would get more mad, he would get bigger.
Interesting. So it's
bigger and stronger.
Isn't that like that makes me think of Mario for some reason.
What?
No, Mario eats something to get bigger, right?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I understand nothing.
Director wanted Tim Roth he is a big fan of Tim Roth.
Is Tim Roth who's Tim
Abomination?
Roth? That's why I recognize that name.
He's from Lie to Me.
I've only seen like 2 episodes of that show.
Yeah, it's a really great show. I'm going to try to pronounce the director's name. I'm going to butcher it.
I think it's Leterrier.
Louis Leterrier insisted that Tim Roth, who he is a big fan of, be the film's main antagonist, even though Marvel and Edward Norton were initially unsure of Roth as supervillain. Leterrier later said it was great watching a normal Cockney boy become a superhero. Edward Norton would constantly rewrite his scenes to the point where the director would work on other scenes while Edward Norton was directing the scenes that he was in.
Like in a cocky way?
No, he would just take charge of his scenes.
Yeah, that doesn't seem great. I mean, I guess he was in movies like freaking Fight Club. So, yeah. I guess he's used to like higher concept stuff. I know Primal Instinct has a huge plot twist, so maybe he was like, I don't know, wanting something deeper, like psychologically. I don't know what he was going for here.
So in the comics, Abomination possesses some pointy ears in the comics, and the director wanted the Hulk to bite them off, like Mike Tyson did. Evander Holyfield, I know I butchered that first name, Evan whatever, but the critics said it was too intense for a PG-13 film, so they re-edited his ears to be round instead of pointy.
That would have been interesting to make a random Mike Tyson reference in a Marvel movie.
Yeah, but this wasn't really it is Marvel, but...
Well, and was the Mike Tyson thing really that topical in 2008? I just Googled it. The Mike Tyson ear thing was June 28th, 1997.
Really?
Yeah, apparently. Didn't think we'd be talking about, what is that, wrestling, MMA? I don't understand sports.
The Incredible Hulk is the shortest Marvel film. The shortest film in the MCU universe.
It felt super long.
It's only an hour and 52 minutes. Just wait until you get to Endgame Infinity War, and they're almost 3 hours long.
It felt really long.
Marvel and Universal actually asked Eric Bana, who played Hulk in 03, to reprise the role of Bruce Banner, but he said no.
Oh, we didn't even talk about the end credit scene.
Yeah.
So the end credit scene basically is General Ross sitting in a bar, and he is approached by Tony Stark, and Tony's like, "Hey, we're building a team," and then it ends.
There are some issues I have with that scene.
What are your issues?
They're kind of spoilers for the next few Iron Mans, or for the next Iron Man.
Well, we're about to watch it, so you can tell me then.
Yeah. You'll learn in it.
So, yeah. So, there was something about how this movie, it's contested whether or not this is technically part of the MCU or only recently became part of the MCU or something like that.
Yeah, so it became part of the MCU right after Captain America Civil War. It's when it became part of the MCU, this particular movie.
Interesting. So there's got to be something in Civil War that like has something to do with that then.
I mean, I already said what it was.
Oh, yeah.
That Ross is going to be in a few more of the movies after Civil War.
So overall, what did you think about this movie? Because I know my particular opinion.
Yeah, it was a good one-off.
You just don't love it as a part of the whole.
No, I don't like it as a Hulk movie, but it does tie in some stuff to the
Can you
movie.
tell he's trying to choose his words carefully so he doesn't spoil me?
Yes.
Overall, I thought it was a decent movie. I definitely prefer Iron Man. Like, I hope more are going to be in that tone as opposed to in Hulk tone. And I hope they're going to be a little more. I want to understand the characters better than I understood Bruce
Yeah.
in this one. Like I said in the very beginning of this episode, I kind of felt like I was like dropped in the middle of a story. I felt like I was missing stuff.
Yeah, that's why it was called a requel. It was because it was a remake and a sequel.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's just it's apples and oranges, really. There's nothing I can, and it'll be interesting once I've seen Mark Ruffalo's Hulk what I think. But
They are very different. Very
once
different Bruce Banners.
But once we get there, their tone is a lot more established by that point, I imagine.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I will like Mark Ruffalo better. And this is no shade to Edward Norton at all. Seemed out of place in this movie. Like I said, I haven't seen the other films that he's done, but like I feel like he's much more well known for like a higher brow, like more psychological thriller type movie.
Yeah, he wasn't interested in Hulk until the director and Marvel came to him to explain what the movie is about.
This movie just seems really out of place for him in his career. Not to say that people can't do that, but he's capable of not to say that Hulk is like below him or anything, but I feel like he's capable of so much more than I think this role gave him. I mean, I'm no acting expert by any means, but like, I don't know.
Do you remember the scene where Samuel Stern's Dr. Blue gets the Hulk blood in his forehead? Do you want me to explain that whole thing?
Oh yeah, no, I did notice that where he like it's like bubbly and like you basically immediately were like you're never gonna see him again.
No. So originally Samuel Stearns turns into a villain called the Leader, who is super, super, super smart. So you know like how Hulk got gamma radiation and made him stronger?
Mm-hmm.
Samuel Stearns in the comics got gamma radiation just to his brain, which makes him super smart, which made his brain grow.
This is just in the comics.
Yes.
Okay.
So he got gamma radiation to his brain. And so instead of getting bigger, his brain grew about 6 times the size. And so he is super smart. He's called the Leader because he's the leader of most evil villain groups. Because he's one of the smartest villains out there, besides Doc Ock. And he was they were intending to make another Hulk movie, but instead they put him in the Avengers and never made another standalone Hulk.
Yeah, overall, this movie there were parts about it I liked and parts about it I didn't like. Overall, I think I liked, it's really hard to compare them, but I think overall I liked Iron Man a lot better. I just think Iron Man, in my personal opinion, was a better movie. Or maybe that's not the case. bigger picture, I think that Iron Man made a better MCU movie.
Yeah.
Than Hulk. Maybe that's completely out of pocket, but I think I enjoyed the battle sequences way more than I thought I would, though. Trust me, this is like coming out of left field for me because like normally I can't stand action movies.
So
I don't think I will be watching Mission Impossible or like a Fast and Furious movie by any means anytime soon, but I enjoyed these battle sequences. Okay. Well, do you have any final thoughts?
I do not.
All right. So join us next week for Iron Man 2 and have a good week, y'all.
Bye.
If you would like to send us any feedback or any messages, you can follow us over on Instagram at @fanclub_podcast or on Twitter at fanclub_podcast. Or you can discuss each episode with us over on our subreddit, which is reddit.com/r/thefanclubpodcast. And make sure that you tune in every Marvel Monday.